recording is on. There we go. Still see some of my messy desk. I thought I'd blocked everything off. I'm gonna wait like one more minute, see if other people join on. This is probably gonna be about a half-hour webinar, so let's see what happens. All right, I'm gonna get started. Good morning, and thanks for everybody who's joining us live. And if you're not, if you're watching this on Facebook, good morning or good afternoon to you as well. Welcome to COVID-19 and the FR contracts. My name is Justin Meyer. I'm an attorney with Rosenthal Meyer. Here's my contact information, and I'll show that to you again. The purpose of this is really to be a resource. The purpose of this is to go over a couple of details, answer hopefully a couple of questions, and really explain where we are in a kind of uncertain landscape. I'm going to go over a contract that has a clause that hasn't really been tested yet. This is a bit of an unknown, and this is a bit of a real question. So we're going to get into things. Wherever you are, I hope you're safe. I hope you're not too stressed. I hope you have plenty of snacks. I'm actually in my office because it's quiet and it's just me. It's a lot easier to get some work done. So let me start with a couple of bigger details. As of now, the real estate market hasn't shut down. That's easy to say, and I'll tell you, I spoke to a mortgage lender yesterday who said he's closing 12 loans today and tomorrow. He's busy. Title people I know are all very busy. This is not going, the real estate market isn't collapsing. And yet, in a way, it feels like it might, because while realtors have been deemed essential, land surveyors are essential, and title companies and mortgage lenders are all essential. There's a real question of, do we want people coming into houses right now? Are we showing houses? Some realtors I know are doing virtual showings. There's questions of how to do inspections, though, and that's kind of difficult. Home inspectors are probably essential, though that's not on the list explicitly. It's going to be a bit of kind of a strange time where we're going to be figuring things out as we go along. There's no one real right answer yet, and what's going to happen with the shelter in place order, and when that expires, or if that's going to be expanded, or what's going to happen after that's done. Do we then find that people aren't willing to show their homes? That's going to be a question. One thing I'm not going to get into much today, but I want you to think about looking at is your listing agreements. We're going to talk about the FAR contract and its provision for what's called force majeure. But consider taking a look at your listing agreements and whether they have the same clause. If you're losing from February 15th or from March 1 until, let's say this runs till May 1. If you're losing 60 days of showing a house and you've got a 90-day contract, you've got a 6-month contract of exclusivity, you're losing a good chunk of that time. I think the housing market's going to come back up. I don't think it's going to go away. I think there's going to be some questions with regards to what's going to happen, especially because of schools. People are still going to want to move into different school districts over the summer, but it is something to keep in mind that some people contracts, what happens if they expire over the next couple of months or even the next few weeks? There's a risk of losing listings. So it's something to take a look at. If you haven't had your listing agreement reviewed, it might be a good time to do it. At the end of the day, this isn't going away. And while this is probably not good, while it's easy to say, I don't think this is going to happen again, I didn't think this was going to happen the first time. Nobody did. We've all been caught a little bit off guard. So you need to definitely make sure that you're taking a look at things. The reason why people say that attorneys' contracts are always so long is because we're always adding language after something happened. We're gonna be, I'll guarantee you, a lot of people are gonna be adding pandemic and epidemic to contracts now, in case another one happens. So speaking of contracts, let's take a look at first the as is contract. And I'm gonna warn you to start. I'm gonna give information, but not everything is known yet. So we're gonna take a look and we're gonna see what we're gonna take a look and we're gonna discuss it. Here is, you can see on the screen, force majeure. All right, let's get the highlighter out. Here it is. Force majeure clause. What this says is that if there is something that an external issue, not related to the buyer or the seller, not related to the house, that makes the closing or some date in the contract unenforceable for a period of time, then it extends everything. But it's not a it's not a get out of jail free card. It's not an extend it forever contract clause. It's a it extends everything by 7 days until the end of the incident, but not for longer than 30 days. At 30 days, you've got an out. So if you're a buyer or a seller and you want to get out of a contract, 30 days after the beginning of the crisis, or or whatever we want to call this, that's really where you start to look at outs. Now, is it a good idea to get out? That's a business decision that I can't help with. But that's where you're starting with. Here's the catch though on force majeure, and I'm gonna read from it a little bit. Buyer or seller shall not be required to perform any obligation. If availability is disrupted, delayed, or caused prevented by force majeure. Force majeure means hurricanes, floods, extreme weather, earthquakes, fire, or other acts of God, unusual transportation delays, or wars, insurrections, or act of terrorism, which by exercise of reasonable, diligent effort, the non-performing party is unable in whole or in part to prevent or overcome. Okay, nobody could have prevented or overcome a global pandemic, so that part is there. But what's missing from this is epidemic, pandemic, disease, global disease crisis. Is this considered an other act of God? That's where we're kind of fitting this in here. Is this considered another act of God? I'd argue yes, but it hasn't been tested yet, and the answer is we don't know. The reality is we don't know what a court would rule. We don't know what anybody would say. So the answer is we think so, but we don't know. So that's the first big issue there, is we don't actually know if this is considered an act of God. I can imagine no court is going to say this doesn't sound like an act of God, but again, until it's tested, until there's a case that proves it, it's not in the contract. You do have to be careful about it. You also have to be careful about the end of this. All time periods, including the closing date, will be extended for a reasonable time up to 7 days after the force majeure no longer prevents performance under this contract. Okay? When is that? Is that when we've got a cure? Is that when everybody's healthy? Is that when we don't have to shelter in place? When does this when this becomes effective is also a question. And finally, if such force majeure continues for performance under this contract more than 30 days beyond the closing date, look at your closing date. If your closing date is today, you've got 30 days from today to close, at which point either the buyer or seller can release. Okay? It's a no, it's a free release. The deposits are all refunded to the buyer, so the sellers can't do this to make some money and then try to resell the house when everything is done, thinking the market's going to be better. But what they can do is they can say, you know what, we decided we really like our house, we're not going to sell it, or we decided we're going to hold on to this land for another 20 years. we're not going to sell it. We see value in it. So that's where we are. Where we are is this may apply. We don't know. And this is in the contract. Everybody who has a contract has signed this. This is in the standard contract. It's in every standard contract. The language hasn't changed. I looked through a few of them. The language doesn't really change on this contract. This is a standard clause. And I'm willing to bet it's going to be different the next time they release a new contract. But for the moment, it is what it is. You got to start looking at dates. I know realtors are good at that, and that's one thing that they always do is they always look at dates. But you're gonna have to start checking. When's 30 days from the closing? Where are we supposed to be? Now, again, a lot of deals are still closing. Everybody's essential. Doesn't mean anybody wants to be doing anything right now, and there's going to be a lot of people who don't want to leave their house. So that's going to be a judgment call. Florida Realtors, though, um, did put out a contract addendum. Now, here's the good and the bad with this addendum. The good is it's a pretty good addendum. The bad is it's not mandatory. So again, you get a seller or a buyer who's stubborn and isn't sure they want to go through with the deal anymore, and they're not willing to sign this. You can't force them. That's going to be, I think, a problem, and you're going to have some good faith issues, and you're going to have some questions. But that's one of the issues you're going to have here. Is I can't force anybody to sign this agreement. I can't force anybody to tell me that they want to extend the contract. The other thing I both love and hate about this is it does extend for an additional blank number of days, and you get to fill in the number of days. It extends the closing date for an additional 30 days if you don't fill anything in. And that's great because it means that we just another 30 days. But what if we're not done in 30 days? What if it's 90 days? What if it's 120 days? What if we don't know how long this is going to take? And that's a real question that not anybody has really come up with an answer to other than that we sign another one. What I would do, take this for what it's worth, is I would not fill in, get a line here, I would not fill this in. Instead, I would put some text here. I would put the text wherever you need it. So if what you're extending is the closing date, or what you're extending is the title cure period, due diligence period, homeowners condominium association approval. You're not getting, by the way, a homeowners condominium association approval right now. They're closed. I don't think you're getting any of that. But I would extend it until, let's call it 7 days after my preferred language right now is 7 days after the state of emergency is terminated. This is a little bigger font wise than you need it, but it shows up. So that's I think where I would start, and I would not put that necessarily just in the closing date. I would put that in the next date. So if what I'm waiting on is the HOA or condo approval, that's where I'm putting it, and I'm extending the closing date. I'm pointing to my screen. You can see me point. You can't see what I'm pointing to. I would put the closing date, which I feel needs to be filled in, until such time as reasonable. 10 days after the last date in the contract that's been extended. I think you need to look at that. I think you need to look at not putting in a set time, because I don't think we know when the set times are going to be. I think we don't know exactly how long everything is going to take. I would make sure the closing date's extended. As we're looking through this, I would make sure the closing date is extended. I would absolutely want to make sure that is extended to as far out as I could get it. Remember, the closing date is you will close by that date. Doesn't mean you have to close on that date. Financing period, I'm going to come back to that in a second. The inspection period, again, I would extend that out as long as possible. You're going to have a harder time getting engineers out. Even though they're working, you're going to have a harder time getting engineers out. Title cure period, it's going to take longer. Okay, if we have to get paperwork signed, filed with the courts, right now they're accepting some filings, but not everything. And if they start shutting down like they have in other states, it's going to take even longer. Feasibility study period, again, same thing. You're going to have a harder time doing any of that work. Due diligence period, all of this is harder. These are all possible right now. Here we go. These things here, I will tell you, I believe are all possible. I believe you can still do an inspection. I think it's going to be very hard, and not a lot of people are going to let you. I believe you can still cure title. It's going to be harder. Some of the things are not going to be as doable. I believe you can still do feasibility studies and due diligence. You can still check zoning. You can still pull deeds. You can still look at restrictions. All of that, because Florida has it all online, makes it very easy to look up. But if there is an issue that requires another person, requires going to court, you're looking at months. You're not getting in front of a judge right now because you need to buy a piece of property. I'm almost willing to guarantee that. So you do need to be cognizant of the fact that even the things that are possible, even the people who are saying, well, you can do an inspection because the engineers are essential. Yeah, but are you getting an engineer to leave the house and to go do the work? One thing that I saw suggested was you could have the seller take their phone and do a live video of the house. If you could want to do an inspection, at least a final walkthrough, you could do it that way. And you could. It's not going to work, I don't think, for an engineering inspection because of the testing that they do, and because they may get up on the roof and they may check the HVAC in different ways, and it's easy really to direct. It's not the way I would recommend doing it. It's very easy for me to miss something if I'm the seller. Very easy for me to miss something. Oops, I didn't show you the giant hole in the wall from where I kicked the wall 2 days ago. Just missed it. So you want to make sure you still want to be doing an in-home inspection, an in-person inspection. One other thing you want to think about doing as we look at these is this only accounts for a delay. This doesn't account for anything other than the delay in the contract. There are other things you can do to account for issues with inspections, issues with the closing. And one thing that I like is, quite frankly, giving people money. You can absolutely tell people, let's hold, 50,000 or 100,000, depending on the size of the deal, 20,000, 10,000 in escrow until we can go through the house and make sure that everything's still in working order. An escrow agreement is definitely doable. It's definitely possible. It's something that we've done before. Title companies do them frequently. There, what you're looking at is how much money do I need to keep in escrow? What are the possible issues? That's where you want to make sure you've had a good inspection. If you had a good inspection to begin with, then you're in better shape there. But you want to look at what are the possible issues that I could be dealing with, and that's a simple addendum there. Now the catch to that is, again, you got to get people to sign it. One thing I've been asked a couple of times on this is what happens if nobody signs an addendum. You're back with the force majeure clause at that point. If nobody's willing to sign an addendum, there's nothing that can be done, unfortunately. So you do need to be careful about that. You do need to watch your dates. This is going to be a time where agents are really going to need to make sure they've got a good relationship with each other, because that's where this is going to happen. Buyers and sellers, I frequently say, don't know what they're doing. I believe that to be true. They're going to be relying on their agents even more, because they need the agents to tell them, look, this is how we're going to do it, and this is how things need to go. That's the basics of it. I'm going to see, does anybody have any questions, or is there anything that people want answered? Again, because realtors are essential, you can be out, you can be going off to sit down with clients, you could be going off to show houses, but the question's gonna be whether anybody wants to look at a house right now or anybody wants people coming into their house. I'd be reluctant if I were selling a house right now to go out there and want people looking at my house. So that's going to be an ongoing question. That's going to be an ongoing concern um, that I think you're going to have. Um, and um, that's just part of it, quite frankly. So that's it. I promise this would be short and sweet. I hope this was beneficial. And as I said, if you have any questions, I'm available. I'm going to throw my contact information up one more time if you have additional questions. Um, if you don't have my contact information, you'll have it now. Second to get back to the screen. So if you don't have my contact information, I'll make sure it's available. Feel free to give me a call. Feel free to reach out to me. We're here for you. We work with real estate agents. We work with title companies. We work with people who have these concerns, and we are available if there's a question, if there's something that people need. Um, if you need help drafting an addendum to the contract because nothing you've seen quite fits what you need, we are available. Um, but if there are no questions, I'm gonna start wrapping this up now. And thank you all very much for joining us. I'll open up real quick for questions. Um, and if there's anything that you have a question about in the future, obviously feel free to shoot me a call, text, or an email. You can text my cell phone. You can call me on my cell or my office line, and you can always email me. So thank you all very much. I hope you found this to be beneficial. We'll be doing another one of these on Monday, dealing with small business owners and how things are going to be changing very rapidly with them, including unemployment, including payroll tax issue, tax breaks to keep people on payroll, and some loans. There's a lot changing in this area. I would expect this to be a conversation that's going to be ongoing for at least the next couple of weeks. And again, let us be a resource for you if you've got questions. So thank you again very much for joining us. Hope to see you on Monday. And if you have any questions, of course, feel free to reach out. Thank you all.